You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight your Indiana Hoosiers knocked off the Minnesota Golden Gophers 82-67. This moves IU to 8-2 on the season and 1-0 in Big Ten play. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Tony Adranya, and we are going to break the game down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU postgame show. This is a game that I joked before we started that there was about an extra 8 minutes of pregame layup lines to start the game, as neither team was playing much defense at all through really the first two media timeouts. But from there, IU went a little bit smaller, and the lineup of Kanaan Carlyle, Galloway, Bryson Tucker, Goode, and Oumar Ballo had some really good defensive sequences. Really kind of turned around the way that IU was playing defensively, and that group got, I think it was a 16-1 run with that group, and maybe some others mixed in there as well. But 16-1 run really gave IU a double-digit lead that they would never relinquish over the remainder of the game, and thought we saw some good things from a number of guys on IU's team. The big guys certainly showed up and put up some numbers, but Carlisle and Tucker both had some big minutes and some solid performances off the bench. So all around a solid performance from the Hoosiers as they kind of shook off that slow start, at least on the defensive end, to be able to win a Big Ten game by 15 points. So lots to talk about as we get into the show. And we're going to start this one the way we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And for the banner moment, I go back to that 16-1 run. I mean, I wrote down at the under 12 timeout in the first half, Minnesota was 11 of 15 field goals, 11 of 13 on twos at that point, and had 14 points in the paint at that stage of the game. And really from that point forward, Minnesota, I believe, only scored maybe 9 points the entire rest of the half. And that lineup was really key. There was a couple of sequences there. IU did a great job of getting out in transition, trying to play quickly. Had a number of nice hit aheads to guys that were able to get shots. One of those came in that sequence. Carlisle fired one up to Galloway, who dropped it off to Tucker, who was also running the floor hard, cutting to the basket. That made it 30-23. And then the final play of that run, as Renew had come back in with Ballo, a nice lob from him. Ballo gets the and one, makes it 36-23 after IU had trailed 22-20. So, 16-1 run there. Thought lots of really good stuff in that sequence. Some good cutting. Carlisle looked really comfortable. Renew had a great defensive possession against Dawson Garcia. Just lots of different things in that sequence was kind of where it all really came together for IU in this game on both ends of the floor. And so that sequence was the one that gave IU a lead they would never relinquish, and what was tonight's banner moment. And the banner moment tonight, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Homefield Apparel, now in their 8th season sponsoring the Assembly Call, and their 4th as the presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. As you know, Homefield has the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you will find anywhere. And since IU is their flagship school, more high-quality gear with unique IU logos from the past is always right around the corner. Like yesterday, and because, as you might expect, Homefield Apparel, the brand that launched literally because the kick was good nearly 10 years ago, there was a whole set of college football playoff attire that they had ready to go when the CFP announcement show hit. For as much as I said I may need to take a break from buying stuff from Homefield, I can tell you that I did not. But I will say another great thing about shopping there is you can earn rewards. So I felt better about my complete lack of willpower to not buy the CFP hoodie by being able to offset some of the costs with my reward. So at least that's how I justified it to myself. So, but it's not just IU stuff for those who are interested in other schools or looking for gifts from other schools. They've got over 180 schools on their site. And again, that makes home field the perfect one-stop shop for holiday shopping needs. I think I even saw they're launching Wichita State sometime this week. So they do have a lot of great deals around the holidays. I think today they had a buy one, get one 30% off sale, something to that effect. So make sure you follow them on social media, sign up for text alerts and email alerts to find out what the latest promo codes are. And if there is no new promo code, you can always use ours at Home Field Apparel. You can go and use HOME23 to get 15% off your entire first order. Again, that's promo code HOME23 for 15% off at homefieldapparel.com. All right, now it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team, which I think we're going to have a guest from Assembly Hall pop in here in a second. But Tony Adranya, kind enough to join me tonight from the IU Film Room. Tony, opening thoughts on tonight's IU victory?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that 16-1 run that Indiana went on. Really changed kind of my thoughts and kind of how the game was go, and I think it just shifted the momentum. I thought Indiana did a really great job of dictating the pace. I think back to some of the Minnesota games in the Ben Johnson era. Minnesota has been able to dictate the pace more times than not, I feel like. And when that happens, they just muddy the game up, slow everything down, and it just becomes like possession by possession. I thought Indiana did a great job pushing the basketball. I thought the bigs did a really nice job of running the floor. Guards did a nice job of finding them, and I thought Indiana just overall dictated the pace for the majority of the game. And to me, you could say what you want about the final kind of quarter of the game. They maybe took their foot off the gas a little bit, but to me it was about as complete of a game as Indiana's played this season that I can think of, just kind of all around. You mentioned enjoyable to watch. And so that was good to see. So those are kind of my initial thoughts, and was excited, honestly, to see Indiana dictated the pace, because I thought that was kind of going to dictate how the entire game went, as I kind of looked at how Minnesota really slows things down. So was excited to see Indiana took control and did what they were supposed to do tonight.
Yeah, that was one thing statistically looking at it coming in. I think I mentioned this on the postgame the other night. Minnesota, at least as I'm looking at it now, I don't think it's refreshed yet. They were 362nd in tempo. And so I thought IU from the jump really, really pushed the ball up the floor, got a number of easy baskets doing that early in the game, whether it was Renew, Ballo, any number of guys that they were doing that for. And I think they really got Minnesota sped up a little bit. It was pretty clear early on the game was played at IU's pace, and Minnesota, while they tried to slow it down occasionally, never really were successful in exerting at least their desired pace on the game. All right, so with that, we're going to try to bring in Josh Pose. Hopefully I said your last name correctly. I did check with Jared, or at least I think I checked with Jared, so didn't want to butcher that. But you're live from Assembly Hall for us. So Josh, what were your kind of opening impressions of the game from being there live? Nope, I think you're on mute.
I'll try that again. 100% success rate on saying my last name correct. Thank you, Andy. I thought, like Tony said, it was as full of as a complete of an effort I've seen from Indiana this year. Those last 5 minutes, I think they just embodied what the crowd was doing. It was waning. There was no energy. Got to say, there was a lot of energy in Assembly Hall tonight. The loudest it got was on that great passing play from Carlisle to was it Galloway to Tucker, that tic-tac-toe type of play. The place erupted. All that being said, a 15-point game is good. You win. You're 1-0, but at the same time, you're up by 22, 23 points. You got to find a way to put it away. Make that 30. You can't let that dip down to 13, 11, even into single digits, because winning is great. But against a team like Minnesota, who, let me tell you guys, that's a mid-major team dressed as a Big Ten team. That was a rough watch. They're just a thrown together team with 9th year, 8th year, whatever he is, senior Parker Fox. So all in all, pretty good game from Indiana. Just need to see those final 5 minutes so I can see a complete 40-minute effort.
Yeah, it's I feel they talked about it a little bit on the broadcast with Minnesota. They lost a number of guys to the portal from a year ago, and talked about how some of the revenue sharing things they think will help them. But yeah, they've really been ravaged by that, where it feels like anytime they get somebody who's who shows some promise. It's not somebody who's going to be able to stick around. So I would agree with that. And I kind of would echo what you guys said there toward the end of the game of things. Maybe not pushing as much late. Although Carlisle did hit the late 3 to push it back up to 15, which still helps you from a metric standpoint. I think they're favored by around 9 or 10, depending upon what site you look at. So I think that's some positives to be had there. In terms of storylines, I think we'll start a little bit from I talked about that stretch in the banner moment, but I think a couple guys who were key contributors in that stretch were Kanaan Carlyle and Bryson Tucker. Carlisle had missed the last couple games. Tucker played arguably his worst game of the season against Miami. Just shot selection was not great. Had some defensive lapses. But I thought both those guys were absolutely fantastic. And with Carlisle, he ends up with 14 points, hit 3 threes, had 5 assists, did pick up 4 fouls, but a really, really strong game from him. Did some great things on the defensive end as well. And then Tucker ends up with 16 points, 6 out of 10 from the floor, 6 rebounds to go with those 16 points. And those guys each only played about 20 minutes. So 30 points between the two of them in 41 minutes. Really, really strong contribution. Josh, I'll throw this to you first. With Carlisle, I know producer Eddie, thanks for he put in some of Woodson's comments, said, Carlisle just practiced yesterday for the first time, full practice, said he felt good heading into today. I think the question that kind of begs a little bit, 1 game sample size, Carlisle looked a lot more comfortable coming off the bench, playing with the second unit. What were your impressions of him as a 6 man, if you will, and is that a role that you think makes sense for him or could make sense for him going forward?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect role for Kanaan because he brings energy. When he got on the floor, there was just a sudden energy bump. Far too often this season, we've seen as soon as the first bench player hits the floor, the energy dips below where it should be. So I think as soon as he came in, although he only had 3 first half points, obviously he had a better second half, he was immediately defensive energy. We saw it in that first game. I think there's a picture of him just hounding the ball handler. He does that night in and night out, every single possession. And for him to come off the bench and provide that spark might be perfect. You can go 3, 4, 5 minutes with him to start the game on the bench. But as soon as you see that energy dwindling, you can bring him in and know for sure that there'll be an energy spark. And he was loud. He was vocal. Defensively, he was much better, trying to kind of quarterback the defense, if you will, kind of like a middle linebacker. He was much better, and you could see more cohesion on the floor when he was on the floor.
Yeah, Tony, what were your impressions of Carlisle and Tucker off the bench, and what stood out to you from their performances tonight?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing in terms of the depth that Indiana has at the guard spot. I mean, if you think about last year, when X was out, if you had Indiana starting backcourt score 1 point and 2 points, it was probably going to be a really rough game for the Hoosiers. And today, that's what we had. Miles Rice was 1 for 4. Trey Galloway was 0 for 1 point. And you had guys in Carlisle and Tucker that stepped up, rose to the occasion, and Woody could kind of ride those guys a little bit longer, right? And to me, that's the biggest difference from last year to this year is you've got some guys that you can put the ball in their hands and trust them to go get a bucket, and not necessarily always on the block are the guys doing that. So, really impressed, especially for Tucker, guy that's a freshman, coming off his worst game of his short career, but still his worst game of his career, to come back and put that type of performance together speaks a lot, I think, to kind of his maturity. There's a lot of freshmen that you can really let something like that snowball, and certainly didn't see that from him. And to me, it kind of encapsulates his game, right? Like, he's just kind of got a mature game. Like, he's got an old school, 15-foot game. And that's kind of like the mentality it almost seems that he has. Like, hey, we're on to the next one. I think it shows a lot of maturity in his game that he was able to have a performance like that. And then with Carlisle, I totally agree, Andy. Like, him coming in that second unit, it's kind of weird because Galloway has a similar effect when he's in that second unit. where he comes in, brings a lot of energy. And Carlisle pretty much did the exact same thing today. So I don't know if it's just like if you're the starting two guard, you're SOL, and the guy coming off the bench is going to get his flowers. But I thought Carlisle was fantastic. I think the energy he brought was necessary. It really helped turn the tide, I think, for Indiana. And he's always somebody, even when his offense has struggled this season, I've always liked his defensive energy. He really gets after it. He's the point of attack a lot of times on the ball, and he can kind of stifle the ball handler on the opposing team. So hats off to both guys tonight. I thought they really picked up the slack when Indiana's starting backcourt really had a tough go of it and helped kind of lead them to victory.
Yeah, I think with those guys, a couple things stood out for me. One with Carlisle, I think I touched on this one of the shows recently. Is you got all these guys who are used to being the guy at their school, trying to figure out how to play with one another. And when he was coming in, he really wasn't in with Rice all that much, and he got the chance to have the ball in his hands, and he was the playmaker in that group versus trying to figure out how to play a complementary role. Again, I don't know whether that works long term or it's one thing that happened tonight. And then with Tucker, to me, he's been a guy who has not been afraid to shoot the ball as soon as he's come onto the court at any point during the season. But what I thought worked well for him tonight was he got going to the rim a little bit, saw a couple go through the basket, and then he worked in the mid-range. I don't know if his first basket or one of his first baskets was off a nice set on a baseline out of bounds. They basically got him cutting down the middle, gets a lay-in. He's so long. If he's playing two guard, he's going to be able to put it in over whoever's guarding him. So I thought he did a better job of not forcing shots or kind of getting easier shots going at the rim to get him going. And so I thought that was key for them. Before we take our first break, it would be remiss if we didn't talk about the big guys. Obviously, this continues to be a storyline. I've been trying to chart this in terms of how the big lineups were. Work together. I think with the two bigs, they were +1 tonight. If I did this right, +14 without him. A lot of that was in that stretch that we've already talked about in the first half. But I did think that Ballo and Renew, certainly made a lot of positive contributions tonight. I think are continuing to get better at being able to play together in terms of passing and things like that. And Ballo, 8 of 11 from the free throw line. May need to give Calbert Chaney a raise for working with him on that one. But I think they're also, we talked a lot about his passing, and they put him in some positions tonight on short rolls, and he was making generally good decisions. On a team where other guys were throwing lobs into the backboard, I'm going to be hesitant to call out him for making poor passes, and I don't think he ever did that. So, but I thought he was doing a good job of being able to fire the ball out to shooters on the outside. Tony, I'll kind of throw this back to you first. Like, schematically, what did you see? Are they doing different things with the two of them, or is it just more growing familiarity with one another that they're kind of getting better in that regard?
Yeah, and I'm one that is harped on the two big thing a lot throughout Woody's tenure, and to me, it's never about playing two bigs. I've never thought playing two bigs is wrong or a bad thing, especially when they're most talented guys. It's more the how. How do you use those two bigs? Do you plant them both on the blocks and really clog the lanes and don't have driving lanes in space? And that's historically kind of where Indiana's been with some of their two big lineups. Tonight, especially, I thought Indiana had some pretty good spacing. They ran a lot of horn sets with Malik and Ballo, and then really they would hit whoever popped and they'd go high-low and try to throw it over the top, or they'd work it around. But honestly, I think when Indiana is at its best, even with its two big lineups, is when they run and they don't have to get set up in the half court. I thought Indiana's bigs did a tremendous job. I mentioned it earlier, running the floor and kind of scoring on the secondary break actions. It doesn't necessarily have to be one pass to the big and you're open, but you're running things before the defense gets set. You get the ball, where there's not help side set yet or whatever the case may be, and a big can go up and score. So I would love to see what Ballo and Renew did in terms of transition points and points in like the first 10 seconds of the shot clock, because I feel like a lot of them were kind of in that time frame. So from a scheming standpoint, like I love the fact that they're still looking to run with those guys. It doesn't really like fit the kind of mindset of like having two bigs. You think you'd slow everything down and try to run things through them, but I really liked them tonight, pushing the pace, running the floor, trying to find them an early offense, and kind of scoring before the defense is set. So, I still like what they look like a lot of times with a Mbako or a Goode at the 4 and one big on the floor. But like I said, I'm not against two big lineups if you can still properly space the floor, give your guards room to operate. And I thought Indiana did a pretty solid job of that tonight.
Yeah, Josh, your thoughts on the tandem of Renew and Ballo?
Well, the tandem wouldn't get away from each other when running the floor. It felt like too many times they were too close to each other. So that caused some issues. But when they were separated, when one would stay back and if Malik would stay back and Oumar runs the floor, it actually worked perfectly. Running the rim runner role, I think, actually works best for Oumar, better than Malik. He's more under control when he gets the basketball and has been a much better passer than Malik, at least in the early going. I think that these guys, after Sam Houston State, I believe, it was Oumar that said, I'm still trying to work with Malik. I've never really played this too big before. And since that, it was just last week, 6 days ago, they have gotten much better. They've played that high-low much better. They're not throwing the ball, hitting the shot clock. And it's actually really fun to see them progress together. And the best way to progress is to be on the floor together. I know you can practice all you want. Once you get to the game, that's where you learn and you do your best work. And they've done that tonight, and it's going to be tougher against a Michigan where there's two bigs to dominate, because Minnesota wasn't a very big team, so it's easy to just throw the ball up and hope Oumar Ballo or Malik Renew catches the ball. But I think that they're going to be much better than most people think with two bigs on the floor. And I was the one that was keeping count of the two bigs versus the one big last week. So don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of one big too, Tony. But I really enjoyed I really want to see them progress as the season goes on.
Yeah, I would agree. And Josh, you clearly inspired me to start tracking it here in these last couple of games. We'll have to compare notes, see if I've got the same answer. But yeah, I think continuing to see progression, but also seeing a plan where you can manage their minutes a little bit the way that Woodson has these last couple of games, where you start them, you've got a pretty good run in the middle of the half, and then you go back to him a little bit toward the end. But even, I think, in both the games, he ended up going away from it again toward the end of at least the first half. And so I think he's figuring out how maybe to make it work and understand when to go to it and away from it and things like that. So I think that's a positive as well as we look at that. So we'll take our first break here. Just a reminder, go to assemblycall.com, subscribe to our free email newsletter. And then when we come back, we're going to continue our breakdown of IU's 82-67 victory. And we'll point out some meaningful moments you might have missed and go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
What's up, y'all? It's Devontae Green, giving you the green light to watch Assembly Call after every IU game. Just don't listen to their opinions about shot selection. Remember, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Go Hoosiers.
And welcome back to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with the coach, Tony Adranya, and Josh Pose from Assembly Hall. And we are breaking down Indiana's 82-67 Big Ten victory over Minnesota. And it is now time for today's meaningful moment you might have missed.
Meaningful moments that you might have missed.
This segment, as always, is brought to you by our friends at the Hoosier Ticket Project, where they help individuals and families experience Indiana University athletic events in person for the first time through the generosity of alumni and fans. To learn more about how you can donate money or extra tickets to help create meaningful moments for other IU fans, visit HoosierTicketProject.org. Again, that's HoosierTicketProject.org. As for meaningful moments tonight, guys, I'll throw out one to start, and then we'll kind of throw it to you. Yeah, I mentioned this on the Friday show that we talked about Tucker struggling. Mbako struggled a bit as well in the Friday game, and I I hypothesized that maybe that was because he didn't really get the ball too much early, and so I did see within the first 5 possessions they tried to run a set they've run for him before, run him off a couple baseline screens. Now he ended up getting the shot blocked, but I think at least got him engaged in the game. He had a 3 not too long thereafter. Ends up with 13 points, I think, for the game. Was the 5th Hoosier in double figures. Had 13 points. Took him 12 shots to do it. Did have 3 rebounds. I thought a better, albeit uneven, performance from Mbako in this one. Josh, thoughts on kind of the importance of getting him involved early, and just overall impressions of how he bounced back from a down game tonight as well.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that if he makes his first shot, he might go for 30. But if he doesn't, he might not even score. And he didn't score till late on Friday night. But like you said, the sets that they ran for him, they got him open. They got him open for 3, but they also got him open in that mid-range shot that he likes so much. I'm not a huge fan. I'll never be a huge fan of a low percentage shot with your heels on the 3-point line, but he makes those shots. So as long as they go in, they go in. I just think that he was much better, more intense defensively, and that's because his offense was working. When his offense isn't working, he's not really in there mentally when it comes to defense. He's focused on that next offensive possession, and it leads to some lapses, and then he gets taken out of the game and only plays 22 minutes in a game. So I think it was really good to see him on both sides of the floor get much better. And yes, we can talk about how he should know how to play defense by now, but still, he's still starting his sophomore year. It's going to take time, and he's going to learn, and he's so much better than he was this time last year.
Yeah, Tony, any meaningful moments stand out to you?
Yeah, there was one in particular, and it was pretty early on in the game, and I think Indiana tipped the ball or something. All I remember is one guy went diving for it, and then saved it, and then Ballo went diving for it, saved it. The Minnesota guy touched it, and then Mbako actually dove to try and save it. Unfortunately, he didn't touch it when he dove and tried to save it. But to me, like, that kind of encapsulates, like, all Indiana fans want, right? Like, obviously you want to win games, but it's like, you know, the knack on this team in the Bahamas was like they didn't play hard, right? There was a lot of times where you're just like, looked like they were going through the motions. And then when you see that effort, you're going to get the crowd in the game. You're going to get more energy in Assembly Hall. You're going to get more people in the seats at Assembly Hall. Like, it sounds so simple and it sounds so cliche, and it's somewhat silly, but it's factual. Like, Indiana fans love stuff like that, and the crowd was on their feet. They got a good ovation, and then it kind of helped spark an Indiana run soon after that. So to me, that was a meaningful moment because I don't think the guys intentionally like didn't play hard in the Bahamas. I think it just some complacency can set in, and like you think you're playing hard, but then you go back and watch it on film, and I go, crap, I didn't. So to me, it did showcase there is a little bit of like there's some recognition of what's acceptable and what's not. So to me, that was a meaningful moment in today's game.
Yeah, I had noted that one as well. I think Renew was the first guy to dive kind of over by the bench, and then it went back, and then Ballo dives going the other way. And then something that happened after that I think I saw multiple times tonight and just haven't noticed as much or haven't noticed as many guys doing is like running to go pick up your teammate. There were a couple of times, one even late, where like all 4 guys were over to do whatever. And like, you know, that can sound hokey and all those kinds of things, but like, you know, for a team where you're not always sure how much fire there is or how much that togetherness there is. Like, I did think that kind of stuff stood out on a couple of occasions. There was even another one where Minnesota threw the ball into the backcourt and basically just didn't even go after the ball at all. And Mbako like sprinted down to see if he could get it to get a layup. Now he didn't get there and he let the ball go out of bounds but I think just like those little kind of heads up effort type plays are something that we haven't maybe seen as much as we would have liked to. You know, Josh, what were, you know, sometimes being there, that stuff, you know, you see even more of those things than we might see on the broadcast. So, you know, what kind of things did you notice from those kind of little things that may not show up in quite the same way from being there?
Well, there's a lot of traditions about Indiana basketball that I've been an Indiana fan my entire life, and they still don't make sense to me. But when a guy dove on the floor, when Ballo dove on the floor, it was the loudest this place has been all year. He had the game against South Carolina where it got somewhat loud, but that was the loudest moment. So, like you said, Tony, people show up to see that. And it was right in front of the bench. It was right in front of the courtside seats, kind of near where the Big Ten broadcasters were, is where someone went down. I think it was Malik went down. And like you said, Andy, there was 4 guys in a snap right there to pick him up. And they got a draw, like a cheer from the crowd. As for the Mbako sprinting down the floor for that backcourt violation, it was right after he gave up a 3. He was poor defensively, allowed the guy to get some space and hit a 3 over him. But on that next possession, although he was going to be taken out, I think it was on that play, it was on that next dead ball, he went and tried to go get that loose ball. A week ago, even on Friday, Mbako doesn't go for that ball and sprint. That's what you want to see from Indiana. Hustle plays. Get those extra 2 points because they're at a premium in Big Ten play. You're not always going to score 80, 82 points in a Big Ten game. There's going to be better opponents in Minnesota. Any point that you can get is big in conference games, and it could be the difference in a win or a loss in making the Big Ten tournament or winning the Big Ten. You have to play every possession, and that's what Mackenzie Mbako did tonight. Especially, I'm impressed after the defensive breakdown.
Yeah, Josh. Any other moments, meaningful moments that you wanted to hit? I've got one more, but I'll throw it to you in case you've got any other that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I didn't listen to the broadcast at all. I don't know if it was shown. Miles Rice going to the locker room, taking that take foul, and immediately running off the floor, talking to Tim Garland. About 10 seconds later, ended up in that Southeast? I don't know. I'm directionally challenged here in Assembly Hall. My bad. But I noticed it. I think 2 minutes later of game time, he was back at the media timeout. He was talking to his teammate. Didn't play the rest of that first half, but was ready to go. That's something you got to notice. Got to take care of. You can't be getting injured, especially with a Friday to Monday game in practice. But with time off Monday to Friday, it's time for him to heal a little bit more because Indiana's going to need him mightily this year.
Yeah, it's a good segue. I did want to touch on him, so this is probably good a time as any. He ends up with 2 points, 1 of 4 from the field. Did have 5 rebounds, really elevated to get a couple rebounds in at least one sequence I can remember. 4 assists. Did have 3 fouls, just the 1 turnover. Only played 21 minutes. I think he continues to be a guy who, I think that the skills that he has are apparent. I think he's figuring out like what this team needs from him on a given night and how he's able to give it to him. And I still think that's a growing process for him. The one basket he did have, he basically grabbed the rebound, took the ball from one baseline, ran past everybody to the other and laid it in. So like everything that you like to see about him is on display. And I did think he made some nice passes and tried to get other guys involved, but I do think he's trying to figure out still how best to use his skills to impact this team. What's been your impression of him so far, Tony? And kind of, uneven as you look game to game, but general impressions of him tonight or just in general.
Sure. I think, you hit the nail on the head that like his talent's apparent. He's fast. He can handle the ball well. He makes great passes. He sees the floor well. He's got a decent jumper on him. He can finish at the rim well. Like he has all of the tools that you want your point guard to have. And then when I watched him on film last year at Washington State, it's why I was so excited to get him in an Indiana uniform. But like you said, he's been uneven to start. I do think, Mike Woodson really puts a lot of pressure and emphasis on his point guard. And that's it. That's not like abnormal for a coach to do. Typically you'll say your point guard's your head coach on the floor. And, I think, like you said, Rice is still just trying to figure that out and what he needs to do game to game. He came to Indiana very much as like a score first point guard, like had a good assist rate last season, but really looked to put the ball in the bucket. And I don't see that as often from him. I think the South Carolina game might have been where he was most aggressive trying to put the ball in the bucket. I think some of it is Indiana's scheme does limit him a little bit. I don't want to like raise alarm bells that Indiana's scheme has ruined Miles Rice or anything like that. But last year at Washington State, they ran a lot of pick and rolls super high, like close to half court, to really give him space to get downhill and then make decisions from there, where Indiana's are more like sideline ball screens that are more like free throw line extended. So he doesn't have as much space to kind of figure things out. So I think he's just trying to figure that part of his game out. But like you said, like he can still affect the game without necessarily scoring. Like I wouldn't designate his play tonight as like horrid or anything like that. He had 2 points, but I thought he positively impacted the game when he was in there for the most part. I did see, and it kind of speaks to what I said about like how Woody puts a lot of pressure and expects a lot out of him. Like the camera cut away. It was right after he tried to throw that lob and it hit off the rim, and he and Woody were going at it going into the break. I'm sure Woody was not pleased with that pass, and I think Rice was trying to tell him, hey, I was trying to throw it over the top, but they certainly were very vocal towards one another as the camera cut away. And I saw a couple tweets from some media members that said, like, yeah, they were going after it pretty good. But yeah, so that's kind of my assessment. I think he gets a grade of kind of incomplete, obviously, so far, as he's still just trying to figure things out. But that's kind of like the age-old Woody quote, right? Like, my guys are trying to figure me out, and then it's like, well, it's February. So, like, he does have to figure it out, in short order. Like, they're in the Big Ten season. So, ideally, you can get more consistent play from him as Indiana gets into the Big Ten season.
Yeah, season is basically a third of the way over as of today, at least for the regular season, without the Big Ten tournament. But all right, so with that, let's go inside the numbers, which is brought to you by our Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. If you live in Bloomington or the surrounding areas and you want your taxes done right, contact our friend and Chat Mom Hall of Famer Megan Mahaffey and her team in Bloomington, Bedford, and Martinsville by calling 812-339-3334 or visiting jacksonhewitt.com. Probably as good a time as any to wish Megan's mom, Libby, a happy birthday today. At least I'm fairly certain it was today. So happy birthday to her, longtime listener of the show, and got an IU victory for her birthday at the very least. So that's a good way to start. All right, so time to go inside the numbers. Josh, I'll throw this to you first. What were some of the numbers you felt like that were most important in determining the outcome of this game?
Indiana's 2-point shooting for sure for me. Since coming back from the Bahamas, I just did the math, not in my head, need a calculator. Indiana's shooting 66% inside the 3-point arc, and they were 13 of 18 from layups today. They were impressive from inside. Obviously, the 3-point shooting, they're not taking nor making enough from beyond the arc. But at the same time, they have made it their calling card to be a 2-point shooting team. And it could be old, could be 1970s style, whatever you may call it, but it's death by 1,000 cuts for some teams. Minnesota just could not handle Indiana down low. They were physical. They scored 42 points in the paint. So the combination of 66% from coming back from the Bahamas and 42 points in the paint tonight, I think that's the stat that's going to really jump out on the page to me, to show that they don't need to make the three to win basketball games, albeit against Minnesota.
Yeah, tonight they were 26 of 39, so it's right at that 67% that you mentioned since then on 2-point shots. And Minnesota's dropped off pretty dramatically. They were, as I mentioned earlier, it was pretty high at the beginning, but fell off a bit. Tony, stats that jump out to you?
Yeah, I think 32-14 in bench points was the difference in the game. We mentioned Tucker and Carlisle accounting for 30 of those, and then Goode had 2 as well, which really helped turn the tide in the game. I think Indiana only giving up 6 offensive rebounds. That could sound kind of silly. Like, of course they should only give up 2. They had huge size advantage, but that has been a huge Achilles heel for them, is giving up offensive rebounds and second chance points, which also tanks a lot of their metrics on the defensive end. So thought they did a pretty nice job of cleaning up the boards. And then one that just, it shouldn't be a bizarre stat to me, just based on how Indiana's played recently, but to watch a basketball game in 2024 where there was only 6 made 3-pointers from both teams combined, like, that's kind of wild. You watch a lot of basketball. I watch a lot of NBA, so it's like, that's like the complete opposite end of the spectrum. You could see 6 threes in the first 6 minutes of those games. So to me, it was kind of an old school ball game. Kind of Big Ten, just throw it inside, a lot of mid-range action, but only 6 made threes from both teams combined. That one was one that just kind of stuck out to me as just kind of like, whoa, you don't see that every day. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I was surprised looking at this that Minnesota only took 11 for the game. That was pretty surprising to me. Another couple things that I would throw in there. IU 14 turnovers. That's been another area that we've tried to watch with IU. 6 in the first half, 8 in the second. Did have 21 assists, so that a decent ratio there. You look at 21 assists on 30 made field goals is solid. Fast break points. IU led 18-13. I actually would have thought that would have been a little bit more. I know Tony, you alluded to that a bit earlier, so surprised that wasn't a bit more lopsided than it was. You touched on the bench points, second chance points. I think the only other thing, this was one of the first games of the season where the free throw shooting was maybe reminiscent of what we've seen the last couple years. This 62% performance, 18 of 29 today, feels like the outlier based on what we've seen so far. And on a night when Oumar Ballo was 8 of 11, you would not have figured they would have shot that poorly. But Renew missed a couple. Galloway missed the first 3 that he took. Did manage to rattle the other one home. So nothing to sound the alarm bells out about at this point in that regard, but definitely different than what we've seen from the team so far. 5 IU players in double figures, each of which had at least 13 points. Just 8 guys played. Everybody scored, and we touched on Mbako. He was the only guy that had a negative plus minus for the game at -1. The bench guys were pretty strong as well. So you're kind of seeing things ebb and flow from different players on the bench. You saw Leal didn't even play tonight. Goode coming off a couple solid games, only with 2 points tonight. So I think you're seeing these guys kind of mix and match and pick things up as they go. But overall, a lot of good stats on the night. Any other numbers with you guys before we take a break? All right, doesn't look like it. All righty. So with that, we'll take our next break, and coming up on the assembly call, we're going to hand out our game balls and the Hoosier Hustle Award. Then we'll discuss a lingering question or two and look ahead to IU's upcoming opponent. That's all next here on the assembly call. Stick with us.
This is Nick Zeisloft. I never miss an open 3, and I never miss an episode of The Assembly Call.
All right, welcome back to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Tony Adranya and Josh Pose, live from Assembly Hall, and we are breaking down IU's 82-67 victory over Minnesota. It's now time for our game balls, which are presented by our friends Allie and James at Bloom Environmental. They want to help you protect your home's air quality, and the best way to do that is to stop water at the source. They've been voted the best of B-Town in basement services for 4 years running now, and their basement waterproofing and crawl space encapsulation is the best defense your home can have against mold growth and structural damage. Mention the assembly call and get 10% off your system, and you can call today for a free estimate, or if you just want to hear Allie talk about Kurt Signetti for an hour, which, I mean, anybody would be happy to hear Kurt Signetti talk for an hour at this point. So I don't see any downside to this whatsoever. You can learn more about them at bloomenviro.com. All right, it is time for our game balls. And with 5 guys in double figures scoring between 13 and 18 points, no shortage of options, which is always a good problem to have, I guess. Tony, I'll throw it to you first. Who gets your game ball?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Bryson Tucker today. For some of the things I mentioned earlier, I thought, coming off his worst game of the season as a freshman, showed a lot of maturity bouncing back in the way that he did. Thought he brought a spark off the bench when Indiana needed it, and really kind of was part of that run that put the game out of reach and into double figures and never touched again. So that's what I'm going to go with today. I thought it was a great bounce back performance for the freshman.
Josh, what about you?
I'm going to go with Oumar Ballo today. I think the 5 of 5 from the field really stands out to me. Didn't take any hotly contested shots, but was playing within the offense. The thing that stands out to me the most, I know we touched on the free throw shooting. 8 of 11 from the free throw line for Oumar Ballo. Calvert Chaney needs a raise, I think I saw someone say. Someone was sitting next to me and said, there's one day he's Shaquille O'Neal, the next day he's Rick Barry. And I said, well, today's Rick Barry. So I'm going to give it to him just based on 5 of 5 and 8 of 11 from the free throw line.
Well, you guys, I really appreciate you guys leaving it to me to break the tie. I could just randomly pick a third person and force the chat mob to do it, but that seems disingenuous. So I won't. I won't do that. Boy, it's a tough one for me. I'm gonna go with Ballo. I think. I think Josh, as you mentioned, the perfect from the field. The free throw shooting was fantastic. Thought he made some great hustle plays, as we talked about. There was even one later in the game I didn't mention. Things getting a little loose for IU. I think that was, I forget whether the behind the back pass was right before or right after this. But he keeps keeps the ball alive, taps it back out. They eventually get it over to Carlisle for an and one. Just thought he did a lot of good things. I think we're continuing to see evolution. I thought he made some nice passes. I don't know that guys always made shots on the end of those, but I think he was more consistently making the right decisions there in the middle. And I thought he was effective as they double teamed Garcia defensively. So I thought he did some good things on that end. And no issue with either choice, but I guess I'll break the tie in favor of Oumar Ballo. So that is his second game ball, and I believe his second in a row as we go forward. So pretty even distribution so far. Mbako's got 3, and now Ballo is in a 3-way tie for second with Miles Rice and Bryson Tucker. So, all right, and now it's time for the Hoosier Hustle Award, which I will have less of an issue deciding who to give to, which is sponsored by our friends at Evansville Security Services.
Hi, this is Anthony Leal, reminding you to check out our friends at Evansville Security Services. Based in the hometown of IU legend Calvert Chaney, Evansville Security Services has been providing off-duty police officers to businesses and individuals since 2001. In other words, they're in the business of prevention and peace of mind. And remember, prevention cannot be measured. To learn more about how Evansville Security Services can help you preserve your peace of mind by preventing bad outcomes, visit evansvillesecurityservices.com. That's evansvillesecurityservices.com.
All right, Hoosier Hustle Award. Josh, I'll let you have the honors to go first on this one.
It's got to be Oumar Ballo for me again. Dive on the floor 3 times.
Point of order. Point of order. You cannot give the same one to the same guy. So.
Well, I want to, but I'm not going to. So I'll go. I'm a rule breaker at times. Just ask my parents. Then I'll go with Bryson Tucker. I feel bad for not giving him the game ball, but also offensively, he was fantastic going downhill, rebounding better, everything you name it, better than Friday. Defensively was just fantastic. Had some moments at times, but all in all, a really good effort from him, although I want to give it to Oumar Ballo.
All right, Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Kanaan Carlyle. Stepped up coming off of an injury, and for much of the night was really the head of the snake on the defensive end. You kind of mentioned Indiana's defense was essentially Ole defense to start the game. A lot of layup lines essentially, and once Carlisle got in there, he kind of helped stifle Minnesota's offense, and they never really got it going again. He was diving on the floor, getting around, and I just like the energy that he brings when he gets in the game, and you can really feel that for Indiana. So I'm going to go with Kanaan Carlyle.
All right. Well, Carlisle is who I was going to go with, so I guess this way I sided with one of you on each one.
Now
so
you have to break the tie. Who do you like better, me or Josh?
Dang it.
Be careful what you say here. There might not be a 3-2-1 tomorrow.
I know, it's tough. Yeah. It's tough. No, I just thought he, for all the reasons that you mentioned, Tony, in terms of really bringing the intensity defensively, as he typically does, I thought that was key. And I just thought he was really showed more of the playmaking than he's been able to show at other times. And whether that was because, he was leading that second unit, I don't know. We'll kind of see what that looks like before. I know producer Eddie had put in the chat that Carlisle had said he doesn't mind playing off the bench. That's what's asked of him. Says he's just focused on winning, which I'm sure is what you just hoped that he would say. But I thought he had another good quote. When we're playing fast, when we're all sharing the rock and all working fast, we're special. When we get comfortable, that's when teams catch up with us. I think he pretty much has his finger on the pulse of what things were. And I think he's a guy who can not allow them to get comfortable by continuing to really push things and playing fast and, fast and under control and those things. And so I thought it was a good step in the right direction for him tonight. And 3 of 6 from 3-point range for him. And I think you saw him hit threes in a variety of ways. We talked about, I know, Tony, as you were doing scouting reports on these guys, he was numbers wise was a better catch and shoot guy. He hit one of those, but he hit one kind of when nothing was going on offensively off the dribble and did some things that way. So I think he was able to show some of his potential today in a way that maybe he hasn't been able to as much in other parts of the season, coming back off the injury, and certainly a guy they're going to need in Big Ten play as that continues. So for Kanaan Carlyle, that is his second Hoosier Hustle Award. It moves him into second place all alone behind Trey Galloway, who has 5, and a number of other guys have just 1. Josh, you are writing the 3-2-1, which also includes a lingering question. So I'll throw it to you. You can feel free to give people a preview of what they, if you know what you're going to do for that in the newsletter. But even if not, just if there's any, what kind of lingering question comes to mind for you as this game comes to a close?
I haven't put my finger on what it's going to be. Right now, I'm leaning towards, can Indiana sustain this style of play for 40 minutes? They didn't. They ran the floor at times, and they looked really good. When they slowed it down, there are times they look really good. There are times they look really bad. I mean, there was one point where it was right in front of me. There was 4 guys at the top of the key, all above the 3-point line. And it was Ballo and Renew together. It was horrific. There was no spacing. Another time I saw Ballo trying to post up while Galloway was backing someone down. I don't understand how you get to that point as a team where you're that disconnected. But can Indiana connect, and will they be able to start running the floor more as they get their feet underneath them and they're trying to get the word out? They're able to run the floor more often. I think that they will be much better if they just continually run for 40 minutes a night. Just don't know if we'll see that.
And Tony, the lingering question for me, and I'll kind of let you weigh in on this because I think it's a little bit of similar to what Josh said. I think that consistency is something that this team is still striving for longer periods of time, and I think to me a lot of that comes on the defensive end and how they can sustain things there. We didn't talk a ton about the defense tonight, other than it was bad at the beginning and it was good in other stretches. It's really been a red flag for people as they're watching this team play. And so I guess the lingering question for me is, how do they continue to get better on that end of the floor, particularly as you head into Big Ten play, particularly as you head to Nebraska on Friday, a team that against all odds has a better defensive efficiency than offensive efficiency at this point, which is a little bit jarring as you look at not really what you expect from Nebraska, but certainly a team that's given IU a lot of trouble with the way they play. You need to look no further than the Big Ten tournament last year. So, lingering question for me that I'll kind of pose to you is, how much can this team continue to grow defensively heading into a series of much tougher opponents? You got Nebraska, a little bit of a reprieve, and then you get into Big Ten play at that point. So what are your thoughts on the defense as you look forward and where we go from here?
It's still a pretty glaring concern for me. Obviously the Bahamas opened a lot of eyes, but even previous to that, Indiana's particularly their ball screen defense, where they really sit that guy in the slot and the nail and leave shooters open, like that to me is just like very, very glaring and something that's been part of just their scheme in the Woodson era. So it needs a lot of work. A lot of times they're not connected, and really what I want to see from Indiana is the ability to counterpunch, like get punched in the mouth, take it on the chin for a second, regroup, and get back after it. And I think that's where guys like Luke Goode and Anthony Leal are really trying to step up and be those leaders. When they do get punched in the mouth, it doesn't snowball into a 38-point deficit or whatever it was against Louisville. So that's what I'm wanting to see. I think Nebraska is the first team really since the Bahamas trip that has the ability to possibly punch Indiana in the mouth, and Indiana be able to counter, especially on the defensive end. Like you noted, Nebraska, not nearly the offensive powerhouse they were last season, but they do punch you in the mouth in a different way this year. They're forcing turnovers at a 22% clip on the defensive end. That's good for 26 in the country. Indiana's turning it over almost 20% of their possessions, which is 287th in the country. That is really where my eyes are going to be as we look forward to Friday, because those are not exactly great numbers working in Indiana's favor. So they're really going to have to take care of the ball. And like I said, they're going to get punched in the mouth. This time it's going to be more so from pressure, trapping. That's what Nebraska's going to want to do. They're going to have a great scheme for doubling the post. They always have when they play Indiana. So I know I kind of jumped around from the defense is a concern to Indiana turning the ball over is a concern, but just kind of looking forward to Friday's game. That's where one of my kind of glaring concerns is as well.
Yeah, and as we look ahead to that Nebraska game, Jared did put a note in the run sheet to say that he is planning to host. He is still alive and a part of the show, so he's had a number of things. So he is planning to be on for that one. So he'll be back in the host chair there. Yeah, Tony, I think the number that you pointed out is the one as you really look at team stats that is maybe the most concerning and will probably tell the story is how well can IU take care of the basketball. You've got Nebraska forcing turnovers, to your point, at a pretty high clip. IU turning it over at times at a high rate. So protecting the ball is going to be critical there. Otherwise, the teams match up relatively evenly. It seems like in a number of these different areas. Nebraska doesn't turn the ball over a ton themselves, but have not shot the three as well as a team this year, just under 30% as you look at it right now. So, it'd be interesting to see, but they're a team that has, even when they were at a pretty big talent deficit, been one who really likes to spread you out, try to find matchups to exploit. And so that'll be, something to watch for there. Individually, they've got 6 guys, it looks like, who are scoring at least 8 points a game. Bryce Williams, the leading scorer at this point, using the highest, almost the highest possessions on the team, does a little bit of everything. Has shot the three, gets to the line at a pretty good rate, and a guy who's 6'7", so got some decent size there. Luckily, IU has a handful of guys who might be able to match up with him and give him some different looks defensively. Connor Esigian hitting 42% from three, 43% from three. And so some familiar names, not a ton of size, as they lost Rink Mast is out for the season. So he got hurt in the offseason. So should be a good matchup. One that is a 1-point game according to the Ken Pom projection. So should be a tight one, and hopefully IU can move to 2-0 in these early Big Ten games.
Can you pronounce their center's name for us?
Ooh, I cannot. No, it's a lot
of Boyek-Tinsel?
Yeah, it's a lot of U's in there. That's I can tell you that. It's a lot of U's. No, I will let whoever is on the call be tasked with that, but I'm not even gonna try. So all right. As we wrap things up here, just a reminder to check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. You can use the promo code HOME23 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. And with that, it is time for last call. Josh, I'll throw it to you first before you get cleaned up with the crew there behind you, and they throw you out of there. But we really do appreciate you hopping on. But what are your final thoughts on the game? Maybe you get some interviews with these people. I mean, do what you got to do. But
they're working their tails off. They do after every game. I don't know if you can hear the leaf blower. I love the leaf blower. I don't. I hate it. It really struggle. I have massive ADHD, just undiagnosed, and when a leaf blower is going, I can't think. So there's that. I think it was a really good game overall for Indiana. Kind of that get right game. They kind of get some luck. Well, with the December scheduling. I feel like every year they get a Minnesota, or when Nebraska was bad, they kind of luck into a game like that, because Indiana's still to this day a marquee game for most teams. So allowing yourself to get off on the right foot, albeit the last 5 minutes weren't great, is a really good start for Indiana. You're 1-0 in conference, and that's all you can ask for. Now going to Nebraska, there's no shortage of motivation. You have last year's Big Ten tournament. You have them almost dominating you for the last 5-6 years at this point. You have no shortage of that motivation. You have to go in, go 2-0, and get back in, go to the holiday break, if you want to call it that. 2-0 in Big Ten play, at the top of the standings, feeling good with the road win like they did last year at Michigan, albeit against a not-so-great Michigan team.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Josh, we really appreciate you hopping on and joining us. As we alluded to, we talked about signing up for the newsletter. Josh writes the 3-2-1 post-game newsletter, so always a good recap of the game and great insight there. So appreciate him doing that. Look forward to that one tomorrow, and really appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks, guys. Got to go clean now.
All right. Get to your shift. All right.
Thank you. All right.
All right. All right, Tony, as we wrap up, final thoughts on the 82-67 victory tonight.
Yeah, I mentioned at the top that I thought it was about as complete of a game as I've seen Indiana play this season. And was it perfect? No. Are there things to clean up? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, Indiana did what they needed to do. They outperformed the metrics, which is important. Something they really struggled to do last year, even when they played kind of bottom-dwelling teams. I mean, make no mistake about it, Minnesota's bad. I feel bad for Ben Johnson. They mentioned the NIL there is just bad. Guys leave if they have good seasons. But like I said, Indiana was a 10-point favorite, I think, in Vegas, 9.5. They were a 10-point favorite on KenPom, and outperformed that. And that's really what's important. When you look back at this game in March, if Indiana wants to make a run to March Madness, beating Minnesota by 15 will help them do that. So that's kind of my takeaway from it. Like I said, a lot of good things to clean up. And then looking ahead to Friday, it's a great opportunity for Indiana to kind of right the ship after that Bahamas disaster. They could really help propel them to an undefeated December record, assuming they beat their 2 bye games as well. So, it's a really a kind of a get right month for Indiana in terms of and I think the conference schedule worked out pretty well for them. But they are going on the road. Nebraska's been an Achilles heel, so I'll be interested to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, it will be interesting, but a good opportunity. First time this team will have played a true road game this season, so being able to pick up Big Ten road wins, no matter who they're against, are gold at this point. If you want to be able to challenge for the title, so being able to pick one up in December would be huge, especially coming off after this game, which is about a home game against Minnesota is the easiest game you can get at the Big Ten. So a good way to start, but you got to build on it from here. And I think as I look at it, I think as you kind of piece together these last few games as they've come back from the Bahamas, I think you can kind of go down the roster and find games where guys played really well. You can find stretches where the team played really well, either offensively or defensively, or both. What the challenge has been is trying to put it all together so that everything's kind of clicking at the same time for an extended period of time. And yeah, everybody's not going to score in double figures every night. That's not really the point. But to think of, the last few games, Luke Goode's had a really good game. Galloway's had some good games. Miles Rice has had good games. Those guys didn't score a lot tonight, but the other 5 guys who played did. So this team has to figure out how to be more consistent, as we talked about. But I think they show you enough that there's talent there. Guys have produced. Things have looked really good in stretches. It's just getting those stretches to be longer and continuing to grow as you're doing it against what's going to be tougher competition as you get into conference play. But this was a good springboard. As you said, did outperform the metrics, which, will like it or not, is an important factor and something that we'll look at during every game. And so I think they took care of business at home. Now a chance to go get one on the road in what should be a pretty simple or a pretty close spread. Not an overwhelming matchup in one or the other. So you get enough guys clicking at the same time, get longer stretches of defensive intensity and taking care of the basketball. I think they can get a chance to come away with a victory and go to 2-0. So we will find out about that on Friday. And as I said, Jared, and I'm not sure who else will be here. I will not be, but some combination of us will be here to talk about it with you. And we appreciate those of you that joined us tonight. And with that, we'll wrap things up here on the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel over at youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to substack.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for the music you hear on the show, and special thanks to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logo. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU Hoops again with you on Friday night. And until then,
take it from me, AJ Moye. Keep your elbows in, eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
All right, Tony, appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, for a minute, I was like, I could have to talk about the game by myself, which nobody needs. So definitely appreciate you being here, and hopefully good stuff to talk about on Friday as well. So
absolutely. Always a pleasure. Too
bad we can't get maybe some of the points that the football team beat Nebraska by to kind of spot a little bit of a lead. But
we'll take just 10. Give us 10.
Yeah. I mean, we won by 49. So just asking for a quarter of those wouldn't be that bad. So anyway, all right. Well, we'll see what we can do about that. But anyway, all right. Thanks everybody. Producer Eddie, thanks again. Great job as always. And everybody, thanks for being with us. And we'll talk to you Friday. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.